Welcome to What's a Beautiful Life Anyway? I'm your host, Jill Bennett. This is the channel that shares ideas to help you live your best life, because life can be beautiful if you live consciously. Welcome to this week's edition of What's a Beautiful Life Anyway? With me today, I've got Sarah Houldcroft. Sarah is a publisher for business owners, coaches, speakers, and novelists, creating the book that you've always dreamed of. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Jill.
Oh,
it's good to be
lovely.
here.
Yeah, it's good to see you. I still love your backdrop. Wonderful. Feel like I'm in a forest with you. We're recording in a forest today.
We are.
Sarah, you've got a fantastic business. Sarah founded Goldcrest Books, and she's been working with authors for many, many years. You've got a background of sales and marketing as well as publishing. You're tech savvy, you're an avid reader, so you can bring a new perspective to the publishing process. And I know you run writing workshops and publishing programs, which have all been very well received. And you're often asked to speak at live events, writers' days, webinars, and Facebook Lives. You also have a great team of experts behind you, and between you all, you have, we tried to sort of work out a figure, but we'll just say many years of experience.
Many years, yeah.
So if there's anyone out there looking to publish, possibly for the first time, and you're unsure how to go about it or what to do next, or you just want some more specialised help, then you are the person to go to. You'll be in great hands with Goldcrest Books. So in the show notes, we'll have all of Sarah's details, and you'll be able to get in touch with her. Or even if you've got a little niggling idea in your brain of a book that you'd like to write, Sarah's the person you need to go to. Now, today, Sarah and I are going to talk about a really fascinating story that I was at a networking event with Sarah, and she told us all this story the other day. But first of all, tell us how you got into publishing.
Well, it's a bit by accident, really, because I'd been a PA for years and years. And when I became a single mum, I became a VA right at the beginning of the industry, and I spent most of my time telling everybody what a VA was, to be quite frank. But I was looking for a niche, and I came across a training program for VAs to work with authors. So I went on this training course, and then it opened up all sorts of ideas, and I started doing all these other things and just started working with, at that point, just coaches and authors. And then gradually, as my name got around, I started working exclusively just for authors. And then on one day, one of my long-standing authors, I still work with her now, said to me, well, why don't you actually become a publisher? Because you basically do everything a publisher does. So instead of being a VA for authors, I became Goldcrest Books.
That's an amazing story, isn't it? Such a good story. And yeah, I think, you know, what do they say? When the student's ready, the teacher arrives, or whatever it is. But you're right, you had all the experience, and it was something you loved, and you loved books. So no, I think that's a great story. And you've got a good book, actually, we should mention here, on how to, is it how to publish, or
how do I publish my book?
Yes,
it's actually called How Do I Publish My Book?
Yes.
And I got another ebook, which is How Do I Start Writing My Book?
Oh, I might send for that. I keep planning my book, but that's as far as I've got, is planning my book. So I'm sure I'll be working with you in the future. maybe as a result of doing the podcast now, I'll be able to write my book. Who knows?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, well, I'll post the links up to both those books in the show notes, so anyone interested in those can get those. I've heard it said that we've all got a book inside of us. Do you agree, Sarah?
Yeah, yes, I think probably we do. I think the large majority of us don't end up actually writing it, if you look at the stats. I certainly, I mean, people have said to me, why don't I write fiction? And I know I don't have a fiction book in me. I've got business books in me, but I do not have a novel in me. But I just love reading everybody else's. Yeah. So it's fine. But yeah, and a number of my authors have come to publishing after they've retired. They've been teachers or something like that, and they've retired, and then suddenly they find that they have the time and they want to write, and the characters, the books are just there.
Yeah, yeah. My brother-in-law,
Wonderful.
funny enough, he's written a few books. One about climbing Kilimanjaro to overcome depression, one on
Wow.
climbing Mount Kenya, and he's just published another book, his fourth, and it's called The Quiet Vet, because he worked as a farm vet for years, and this is full of, you know, stories from the farming world. So yeah.
Ah,
And you're right, he's retired now, and it's, you know, all these books are coming out of him, so it's great.
yeah, yeah.
Have you ever had anyone you really couldn't help with a book?
Well, I was approached by somebody. I can't actually tell you the details because of confidentiality, but it would be a name that people would know. But
Okay.
I decided that I wasn't very keen on the content, so I had to send that particular person elsewhere.
Okay. Very discreet. You're being very discreet, Sarah.
More I can't say. But mostly, yeah, I will publish. I mean, the important thing is that the content sits right with me, because I don't feel like a publisher, particularly these days. I've got much more discerning, and if I don't feel right with the content, I'm not sure that I would want to actually publish.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. And you know, you've got that what's the word I'm looking for? Discretion in you, that you know, you don't just publish for the sake of publishing, that you want to be at peace and with whatever you're publishing. That's great. That's great. Now, moving on to what we really want to talk about here, because obviously in life we all want to be happy and we want to have our best life. And that's what my podcast is all about. You know, what's a beautiful life and how can we live it? And you recently did a talk at an event I was at, where you talked about your friend Jill. How did you and Jill meet?
Well, originally she was one of my authors, and we kind of just clicked, really, and we got on so well together. And then I remember I went to stay with her. I used to go to the London Book Fair, and she lived in London, so I went to stay with her while the fair was on, and I visited the fair, and then we had such a fantastic time together. But we just got on really well, so we kind of crossed that barrier between sort of client and friend. But originally, yeah, we worked together.
Okay, and tell us a bit more about Jill's background.
Well, she was for many years a palliative nurse, and that was kind of her passion. She talked about that a lot, and she wrote 2 books on that, and I'm not sure they're still in print, to be honest, because it's a long time ago now, but to help people deal with sort of illness in the home and that kind of thing. Yeah.
Okay, so she'd been surrounded quite a lot with things related to death and dying.
Yes, yeah.
And so she did. I mean, tell us the story about what happened towards the end of her life.
Well, she chose to decide when she was going to leave this earth, and so she did go to Switzerland to end her life. She was 75, and basically pretty well. You know, she didn't have a terminal illness, but she wanted to kind of go while she was on top. I mean, she'd been surrounded by death all her career, and she used to say to me, she wasn't frightened by it. And she said when she was with her patients, when it got to that moment when they passed, she said it was a beautiful moment, and you just saw all the stresses and strains, and they had such a beautiful, peaceful face. So she said, well, you know, I'm not worried by it. I think probably, like a lot of us, she was more worried about being disabled in some way and suffering. I think that's, which obviously none of us want. none of us
No,
want.
no, we don't want to be a burden on anyone, do we, at all?
No,
So
no.
she had been a little bit ill, hadn't she, for a few years?
Yeah, she had shingles, which meant that she couldn't. I mean, she used to say to me, I can't garden as long as I want to now. And that kind of thing. But she was
Yeah.
still, you know, mentally alert and all the rest of it. So I think to people probably listening to this, that might be quite a shock that she would choose that moment to end her life.
Yeah, yeah. How long had she had a partner, didn't she? How long had she
Yeah.
been with him?
Quite a while, I think. Yeah. So and her sort of close family and friends knew really what she wanted, but obviously she couldn't tell anybody when she was actually going to go, because it's not kind of legal. I mean, it was in all the papers. Actually, she was in the papers, and there was a bit of a media frenzy for a while.
Yeah. How did he feel about it?
Well, I think like me as well. I mean, we kind of respected her decision, because after all, it is, you know, it's her life. And I think you know, as her partner or as her friend, if we truly care about her, then we have to respect her wishes on this, I think.
Yeah, yeah. So how much of the whole process of going to Dignitas did you understand? I mean, I don't even know how it works. Do you have to visit them first, or do you?
Yeah, you have to go a couple of days or so beforehand, and they kind of vet you to make sure that you are fully, you know exactly what you're going to be doing, basically.
Yeah.
And all the time they are repeating, and then once they sort of set you all up with the lethal injection and all the rest of it, again, you're asked whether you know what you're doing, and whether you know that I think there's some kind of, obviously I haven't actually been there myself,
No.
but Jill she had accompanied other people who were terminally ill when the family didn't feel able to be there. She went in their place, so she knew, she'd seen it all, and apparently there's a sort of a button you push and you have to say, and then her partner told me afterwards that, yeah, she said, yes, I know I'm going to die, and then you push the button and then poof, off you go, kind of thing.
It's so hard to imagine, isn't it?
It is.
That, really. And many people listening might feel that it's wrong. How did you feel?
Well, I think obviously in Jill's case, I respected her decision, and I was happy with that, and I can kind of understand it. I mean, having seen members of my own family suffer dreadfully, I wouldn't actually want to wish that on anyone, and I would hope that maybe I would have the courage to do something like this as well, but I don't know whether I would. To be
I
honest,
know
it's a really difficult one.
it is a difficult one. In our family, we've talked about it. So I know my mum, who now has Alzheimer's, and she's crippled with arthritis, so she can't walk, so she has to be in a care home. And I know from conversations I've had with her in the past, she would not want to be there. She has no quality of life. She doesn't know what's going on. She sometimes she knows I'm a daughter because she's got 3 daughters. And sometimes she doesn't, but she can never remember my name or the fact that I'm married or got children. And I know she wouldn't want to be there. So it's almost like we do need a change in the law, but it's obviously got to be done in such a way that, you know, I mean, Mum would have made a living will saying, if I'm in this situation, I don't want to be here, because I know she would have made that. And I know it works in so many places, Holland, Sweden, Switzerland. There are so many European countries where it's allowed. And I think it would be a good thing here, because I know I'd make a living will that if I ended up, you know, with dementia or Alzheimer's, and I really didn't know anybody anymore, I wouldn't want to be around. It
No.
would be such a burden on people, wouldn't it? It's
It would, and it's about quality of life, isn't it? And Jill said to me, you know, she'd had a fantastic life. She was very happy, and she felt she'd achieved everything she wanted to do. She had no regrets at all, which obviously was something that I spoke about in the talk. The fact that, you know, you can get to that point in your life, and you can say, well, I've got no regrets. I've done everything I want to do. Yep, I think I'm ready to go.
Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing.
It is amazing, because we generally hear the opposite, don't we? There've been books, and I wish I could remember one of the authors now, but there's been books written by nurses in palliative care where they talk to patients when they're about to pass, and most of what people talk about are regrets. I wish I'd worked less, or I wish I'd done more, or I wish I hadn't fallen out with a family member, or whatever. So I guess it's much better to go when you know you haven't got any regrets than, as most people do, that they have regrets.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So it is a strange thing to have done, but it worked for her, and as her friend, I respect her wishes. Yeah.
You respected her wishes, and I know it's not for us to judge, but do you actually feel what she did was right?
I mean, it was certainly right for her, and I do feel that we should have the choice to be able to do this. To be honest, I mean, I know that there are some that say, okay, well, any kind of suicide is not right, but I think it all boils down to choice at the end of the day. It's not for everybody, obviously, and for most people it wouldn't be.
No.
But I think for the few who feel that they are content and they do want to go, or they are suffering, then I tend to feel that we are a little bit behind with our rules.
Yeah, and I think it's where you can plan it like that. I mean, I know of a few cases quite close to home where people have committed suicide, and then you've got the whole shock on the family. Whereas if someone can express their wish not to continue, we can intervene more, and we can get them the help that they need and talk about problems. So I know this wouldn't take away all of that, because it's people in desperation who do that, who do actually commit suicide. But it's, you know, it would be a starting point if people, especially those who commit suicide because they are ill, it would be a way for us to maybe have a nicer end to a life where someone has a terminal illness. And I know a friend of a friend, a Dutch friend of mine, her friend in Holland, her husband had been a doctor for his whole life, and he just retired. And within a few months, he knew something wasn't right. And he, after a while, he said to his wife, I think I've got motor neurons. And he'd seen people suffer with motor neurons and how awful it was. And he chose to be euthanized because he said, I've seen it, I'm not going there. And very quickly after diagnosis, that's what happened. And, you know, again, she respected his wishes. It does seem kinder, doesn't it? If you know, we don't let our animals suffer.
Exactly. That's what I don't have any qualms about having one of my animals put to sleep. I'd rather that than them suffer when there is going to be no good ending anyway. We couldn't do that. We couldn't do that with my family members. And my father suffered a lot, and he was kept alive all the time. He was kept alive whereas if he was allowed just to, he was so flipping old, goodness knows. I mean, if it hadn't stopped working, it'd have fallen off. I mean, you know. So, and he didn't really want to be here, but it was as if the medical profession had a duty to keep him alive at whatever cost. And I'm not sure that that's, it's the difficult position that they're in. So it would need to be some kind of legal thing would have to change, I think.
Yes, and it would have to be, you know, us writing the living will, saying, you know, if this happened, I'd be okay, but if this happened, I wouldn't. It would have to be really specific to allow it to happen. But I definitely think you're right, we're behind the times, and things need to change, really. But that's probably very, very deep philosophical conversation.
It is, isn't it?
for my podcast, which is normally all light and uplifting. But I think it is something that is important we talk about. On the idea of going back to your books, let's just say to people, if someone has got a book idea in their heads and they want to talk to someone, they can contact you and you'll have a chat with them.
Yes, I would be happy to talk to them and see how it goes from there.
Brilliant. Well, I'm sure in the future we may see a little book about Jill and her life experiences. So we'll look forward to that one, Sarah.
We shall.
But, you know, just thank you so much for chatting to us today. Fascinating topic. And maybe one will come back to you later on. Thank you.
Thanks, Jill. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for listening to this week's show. Check out all the links to the resources mentioned in today's episode and all my freebies in the show notes. See you next time.